Hi, dreamers. Well, what can I say about January? I spent a lot more time working on my option strategies, and it shows. You see, I'm fully living off of my investment income at the moment, so I'm really trying to optimize and do research every single day. And this month I made over $10,000 in dividends, but for the first month ever, I made more in options than in dividends. I made over $11,000 in option. But as I mentioned, it took a lot more work. So let's get to it. Today I'll review the end of the month totals where I'll show you my dividend and options income. And this month I made a total of over $22,400. So let's take a look at this detail. And so you can see here in January of 2024, the total was $10,903, which is in line with the $10,700 from October of 2023 and the $10,380 from July of 2023. So if we take a look at the detail inside of that, you can see how that breaks down across the weeks, with the bulk of the dividends coming in week 1, 2, and 3. So taking a look at the detail, the month started off with $480 from PTY, and PTY is my one and only bond fund. And one thing I like about it is that it's a steady payer. So the amount that I get every single month does not vary, and I can count on that. As always, I have this one rogue Devo payment that comes in a couple days after the others. And so this one was $83.88. I got $79 from my growing position in Maine, $10 from a dividend growth stock, McKesson, which has been doing really well, $7 from GPC, just $5 from ADP, and then here you can see this almost $1,200 payment from JEPQ. And JEPQ has been a great performer for me ever since I recommended it in a previous video several months ago. And the goal of JEPQ for me is just to have a steady, high yield payout. And really, any capital appreciation is just bonus for that. Alright, I got $118 from SLF, and as you probably know from a previous video, I upped my Pepsi to 100 shares so I could start writing options against it, and so the payout from Pepsi this time was a lot higher, at $117. And so going into week 2, I've got the last payments of these yield max funds. As you may know, I closed out my Coney position and my Tesla position. And if you follow me on Twitter, you probably know that I've been really just using the Tesla position to show how bad these yield max funds really are. And of course, this is tied to Tesla, which has had its own challenges recently. The bottom line is that the mechanics of these yield max funds just are quite different from, for example, the JEPQ or JEPB option strategy. And so for me, all of this was an experiment with a little bit of money, and I've decided my money is better spent other places. Alright, the next payout was about $2,500 from Mo, followed by about $467 from Philip Morris. And as you probably also know via another previous video, I've been actively taking down my tobacco reliance in an effort to diversify my portfolio and really take a hard look at the trends around combustibles. I made $66 from Getty, $53 from GSK, $364 from IIPR, and almost $280 from Ben. I got $323 from Realty Income, followed by just under $15 from Mondelez, a dividend growth snack food company with international exposure. Going into week 3, you see my one major telecom position, which is BCE, a Canadian telecom. I got just over $2,080 from BCE, followed by another payment from Maine of $69. I got just over $240 from WPC, just over $68 from a rare dividend king REIT FRT, over $580 from STWD, just about $65 from Stag, about $16 from Cardinal Health, $12 from Cube, over $13 from APLE, and then just $2 from QQQ. And to round out this month, I got $17 from Cisco. I got just over $200 from SPY, which is a relatively new position that I've started. And I might do a dedicated video on SPY and why I prefer it over JEPI. And in the last week, I got just over $600 from BNS, Bank of Nova Scotia, just over $100 from Canadian Imperial Bank, and I got just about $269 from Devo, which is one of my favorite derivative ETFs, which I think is really set up well for some capital appreciation in 2024 and 2025 as we experience those interest rate cuts. I got $139 from BST, just over $21 from Gain, and about $15 from SPY. And so that's the detail behind the dividends that made up that $10,900 in January. But let's take a look at these options and discuss. So here you can see last quarter I made a total of $8,400 for October, November, and December of 2023. And part of the reason why that occurred was I was being very conservative with my option strategy as we were experiencing a pretty substantial rebound from October all the way to December and a lot of volatility. But in January, I started to employ some new strategies and take on some additional risk. And in total, I made over $11,300, which was more than the entire fourth quarter. And so what were some of the things that I did? Well, if you watched my summary options video, you know that I learned that I made most of my money through puts. And so I freed up some additional capital so that I could play my cards a little bit more on puts. And so this month I had freed that money up to focus on and take advantage of some of the earnings that I felt were going to provide tailwinds for some of the tech companies, in particular Amazon, IBM, and Microsoft. And so 63% of that $11,000 were from puts. And another learning that I covered from that summary options video was just how to really double down and focus on a couple of winners that you really understand. And one that I've done really well with last year was SOXL. And so about 45% of that $11,000 came from wheeling SOXL back and forth. A new strategy that I've been learning is doing dailies or every 2-day QQQ, SPY, and IWM. And the thought behind IWM also comes from my recent small cap rebound video. And so additional freed up capital has gone to wheeling strategies that represent about $1,500 of that $11,000. So all of those things combined that I covered in that summary options video led to the dramatic increase in my options income in January 2024. And that brings us to our favorite part, the cumulative passive income chart. And I created a new one to start off 2024. And so just to orient you, in blue, we have the dividend total for 2022. In orange, we have the dividend total for 2023. And in dark green, we have the total dividends for 2024. Now, as you know, 2023 was the first year that I started doing options. And I also had a dedicated video talking about the double dip strategy of using the cash reserves to not only do cash secured puts, but also make interest off of, since our interest rates are still high. And so the yellow bar is interest plus dividends plus options to give a total cumulative passive income. And finally, the light green bar is going to represent the same for 2024. Dividends plus options plus total interest. And so you can see, if we compare January of 2023, I made $11,581 in options, dividends, and interest. And so far this year, in the first 30 days, I've made $22,461. Which, if you look at the yellow bar in February of my options plus dividends plus interest, I made a total of $20,693. So already in the first month, I've made more than I made in the first 2 months of last year. And as you recall, I've been trying to break the $100,000 mark for dividends alone, but have started to pivot to this idea of a total investment passive income basket. And so that leads me to my final point I want to make in this video. One of the reasons why I cover the dividend detail and the options detail every single month is because I want to reinforce the idea that some of this is truly passive with a little bit of monitoring, and some of this is much more active and requires some skill and risk. And the most important thing is for you to be thinking about what life stage you're in terms of wanting to try to supercharge your investments, or fully retired with enough money to last the rest of your life, and therefore not interested in taking on additional risk. I think I'm somewhere in the middle, where I'm still trying to build my portfolio, and able to take on some risk, while also trying to actively live off of this real time. And that's what prompted me to ask you in a recent poll, how many of you watching my videos are options traders interested in options videos versus pure dividend stock videos? And I was actually surprised at how many of you wanted both options and dividend content. And so going forward, I'm going to try to include a mix as I continue to learn and become more advanced in my options strategies. And also let me end this video with another final point. I hope that when you watch these videos, you become inspired and you look at this as a potential vision for how you could be polishing and finishing your portfolio as you get to be 10, 15, or even 20 years into your development. You know, it's really something that I wish I had had access to when I was starting out, to start to build towards a vision and be thinking about the kinds of skills I wanted to develop and the ways I wanted to structure my portfolio in order to produce these kinds of results. So in upcoming videos, I'll talk more about the structure of the accounts and how I'm thinking about my rotations in both the dividend stocks and also what I choose to focus on in terms of options in different timeframes. And so we'll cover things like when I buy to close, when I opt to play earnings or not, what I'm learning from my zero DTE options, and frankly what all of that means in terms of definition, risk, and reward. Well, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this dividend income update. And if you want a richer, real-time experience with me, you can always follow me on Instagram or X. And if you're doing your own research using Seeking Alpha, feel free to find the link below to subscribe if you want, no pressure. As always, I encourage you to do your own research, then implement and learn by putting it into practice. And as a reminder, I'm not a financial advisor, so keep in mind these videos are for entertainment and inspiration only. I'll see you on the flip side.